Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for our weekly track roundup, where I go over what I felt were the best and the worst tracks of the week. You should know this is a pretty regular segment right now, okay? Before we get into those tracks, make sure down there in the description box, and I know you're doing this because I am seeing the effect of it, and I want to say thank you to everybody who does take part in this, but our Amazon Associates link, if you hit that link down there in the description, if you live in the US, we get kickback from whatever you purchase, and believe me, it's showing, it's helping out the segment. I appreciate you guys using that link. And also make sure to use the link down there to our good friends can't talk today. Our good friends over at Turntable Lab. On that website or on that link, you will find a page where there's some vinyl and some turntable equipment and all sorts of stuff, you know, for the beginning record collector to sort of start their record collecting journey, their record collecting dreams. Yeah, we get kickback from that as well. Any purchase you make over at that website once you've hit that link too. Cool? Cool. All right. So, having gotten that out of the way, let's get into the best and worst tracks of the week. Oh, this has been a good week. This episode's going to be pretty backloaded because I found so many great tracks that I liked a lot this week. You know, only a handful of songs that I thought were so purely awful that they needed to land in the worst tracks of the week list. I mean, I probably could load these segments with just track after track after track from like the new Fast and the Furious soundtrack, but, you know, I kind of feel like I'd just be beating the life out of a child at that point, and it's just kind of unfair. You know, it's not fair for me to beat up on the Fast and the Furious soundtrack. You know, it doesn't know it's bad. You know, it didn't ask to be created. You know, it's really just kind of like a Frankenstein monster of all the horrors that modern popular music has to offer. So, you know, but still though. Getting into outside of that soundtrack, what I felt were the worst tracks of the week. Desiigner. Yes, our good friend Desiigner, an artist whose new English project was so bad it spurred our Not Good series. So he has 2 new tracks out. I believe one of his recent singles I did enjoy. I thought was pretty good. But these 2 new tracks, God, they are, I want to say not up to snuff, but that would imply that there was like some kind of quality standard there to begin with. The song Up, one of these 2 songs, Up, to me just sounds like a Future ripoff. It just seems like Desiigner is completely content and does not care that he sounds just like Future on this track and many other tracks. I thought as he kind of progressed and would continue to drop more material, he would kind of maybe try to form a style or a sound of his own, but he just does not care that he has a deep kind of sing-songy rap voice with auto-tune on it, and he's throwing that on top of a trap beat, and it just sounds like a Future song. It's so disgustingly close to a Future song, to what Future does on a song. It's really just a disappointment, you know, that he doesn't care to be anything else other than Future Shadow. The track that he dropped, Thank God I Got It, this one's a bit of a different animal over here. Not that it doesn't sound similar in tone, but at least Up has just a smidge of structure or rhyme or reason to it. Thank God I Got It is just literally verbal diarrhea. And this kind of just goes to show that Desiigner is one of those rappers, and there are many more of them out there, that would not sound even half as listenable. I'm not even going to say good, listenable as they are if it weren't for the fact that they have really talented producers and really talented co-songwriters kind of there making sure that the random, you know, bullshit that they say into the microphone actually kind of like sounds like it was intentional. This track sounds like they just gave him a beat and he did whatever he felt like over it, because the chorus is barely a chorus. There's almost no rhythm or meter to a lot of the verses, at least no consistent rhythm or meter, and not in a way where it sounds like he's being super experimental or anything like that. It just kind of sounds like he's doing everything off the top of his head, but it's like he has no style, he has no direction, he has no sense of rhythm. I really have no idea what he thinks he's doing on this track. It just sounds like, again, I'll say verbal diarrhea. He's just kind of doing whatever. and it does not sound good. And we'll leave it there. So those are two terrible tracks. And the other track that sort of made it into this segment that I was kind of surprised that I didn't end up caring for as much as I did is the new Timbre track, Grifting. Unfortunately, while Timbre is a project that I've been following for a long time, a project whose sound and whose songs I've really enjoyed, these two new tracks really have me worried about this new record because it sounds like they're throwing everything that made them appealing in the first place out the window. Their last track had kind of a very cold, sparse, almost electronic feel to it at some points. This new track over here is almost like them trying to make a sparse, depressing, funky southern rock. I don't know what's going on. It does not make sense to me. And not necessarily in the sense that they're kind of hitting upon something entirely new. It just sounds like an overt clash of styles and moods coming together in this track here. And I don't know, I'm just kind of anticipating this new record because maybe it'll click with me and hit me as being this fantastically genius piece of musical expression, or it may end up being one of the most significantly disappointing records I've heard this year. Either way, something to talk about. And that, that's going to do it for our worst tracks this week. Literally, that's going to be it. Let's move on to the tracks that I was kind of met on, sort of on the fence with, but, certainly worth mentioning. Want to give a mention to the new Beth Ditto track, Fire, sort of like a bit of a soulful rock, very epic, grand anthem. I'm not a huge fan of Beth's voice. It's never really been the case, but I do think that this was kind of an interesting and somewhat mature direction for her and her music. So, maybe it'll resonate with some people and her career will get another wind off of what she's doing with this new forthcoming record. Certainly sounds like she's, trying to do something a little bit more accessible. And again, I'll say mature on this new track over here. And, that's always cause or, I guess, opens the door for potential, to kind of get a new opportunity going. So that track's pretty decent. Thought the new drums track, Blood Under My Belt, was okay, although it does kind of sound like a bit of a throwback to their older, somewhat indie, somewhat surf rock, somewhat dream pop sound. Nothing really altogether new or special for them, but, certainly the band sounds like they're holding their own and sticking to their guns in a somewhat decent way. From that drums track, we have this new Jack White track titled Battle Cry. It's just kind of a weird, short rock instrumental that's super aggressive. Sounds like something Jack had recorded to send over to baseball stadiums to be like, hey man, play this during the game. Get everybody amped up during the wow, wow, whittly, whittly, whittly. It just sounds like really novelty. I'm not really sure how to categorize the track. I heard it once and I'm just like, okay, I don't need to hear this again. I mean, it sounds like a novelty song and I don't know what Jack is trying to do with this single over here. Moving on from there, Evidence with Throw It All Away. The West Coast rapper is coming through with a very moody, somewhat introspective new single over here, new album on the way. Give it a shot. It's decent. The band Succumb off of Flenser Records has a new track out titled Bedchambers. And just like the last song that I heard from these guys that really kind of blew me away, excuse me, it is a really interesting mix of hardcore punk, post-hardcore, black metal, like a little bit of death metal in there too. Excuse me again. But what really kind of disappointed me about this track, or sort of let me down about this track a little bit, is that the vocals felt so distant and didn't really bring as much in terms of power or intensity as they did on what I had heard from the band previously. Hopefully this is not so much the case for the rest of the cuts on the album. Hopefully, the rest of the cuts are a little more electrifying than what I heard here. But still, the band does have a unique sound and mishmash of extreme and sort of loud rock styles going for them that I don't think a lot of other bands do. So, that reason alone is enough to warrant taking some time out to check them out if you are into those genres. Moving on from there, ASAP Ferg has a new cutout titled East Coast featuring Remy Ma. And while it is a banger, ASAP Ferg does bring great energy on this track. I do like Remy's feature on this thing too. This to me sounds like something that should have been on his last record. This to me sounds like what should have been the Trap Lord follow-up. Instead, on Trap Lord's excuse me, Always Strive and Prosper, that was the record after Trap Lord. Duh. Instead, on Always Strive and Prosper, we just got A$AP Ferg making the worst sounding attempts to pull together some kind of badly conceived pop crossover, and it fell flat on its face. It was a terrible record. I don't know. I don't even know if I could pay people to like that album. Like if I went down to New York, I would really struggle to find some people who liked that record. And again, while it does sound like he's going back to his roots a little bit, he's going back to that kind of eerie, atmospheric production, that shouty kind of junkyard dog. You know, I'm really angry, but I'm also like got kind of a bit of a goofy voice going for me. Delivery that A$AP Ferg has that he does so well. You know, he's going back to basics a little bit, but it just seems like for me, you know, too little too late. While this is a decent single, it's worth shouting out. It's worth turning you guys onto it, but I'm not going to be convinced until he pulls together a cohesive album where he, you know, conceives a sound and sticks to it and says, you know, this is who I am as an artist. I'm not going to give you some focus grouped record that sounds like, oh, I need some hard tracks. Oh, I need some tracks for the ladies. Oh, I need some tracks for this setting. Oh, I need some tracks for that setting. I need some tracks for this group. I need some tracks for that group. I want to hear an album that's you and for you, an album that you made for yourself because you were like, God damn, this is me. This is what I got to express. You know, this is just like what's inside of me, and I have to put this together for me and for my audience and for nobody else. And that's the kind of record that's going to win people over, because that's the kind of record that, like Trap Lord, people gravitated toward that record. You know, while some people didn't like it, you know, and understandable, it's not a deep album, but a lot of people like that record because A$AP Ferg at the time brought a hot and an interesting and a somewhat unique sound, and he totally drifted away from that. I'm ranting at this point. I digress. I'm sorry, but, you know, as decent as this track is, I think A$AP Ferg needs to push it a little further, you know, and that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Moving on from there, Mount Kimbie has an okay track out titled We Go Home Together featuring James Blake. I like the emotion of this track. The vocals are great. The very moody instrumental is fantastic too. I just wish the track had more structure to speak of, because once it eventually finishes, it just feels like it kind of fizzles out and just drops off the face of the earth. And it's like, what did I just listen to? I felt like I kind of listened to a very long motif or something. You know, I felt like I hadn't progressed or sort of, you know, traveled through any song or anything. It was just kind of like this very unorganized but very pretty idea that Kimbie had going for themselves, but it just like, again, just flatlined toward the end, and it was like, okay, I mean, I guess that was a thing. And finally, I want to mention the new At the Drive-In song, Hostage Stamps, which I thought was a decent cut. You know, the band is not sounding quite as ferocious as they used to. That's to kind of be expected. But certainly, you know, I think they're living up to at least a standard that At the Drive-In has set. And you know, I don't know if I'm really going to have too much more to say about this track or any other song the band drops until I hear everything on the record. You know, then and only then it's going to be the best way to assess whether or not the band is like really come back with a vengeance. And finally, actually, I know I said finally, but I mean it this time. The new Alex G song, Proud of You, seems to be one of Alex G's more memorable songs that I've come across. Seems to have some very personal and introspective lyrics too, that I really like. Seems like he comes across with a very solid sort of fluid idea on this one too, as far as like the topic of the lyrics. You know, I'm not really crazy about the delivery or the sound of the track. Doesn't really jump out at me. It's kind of a very laid back, very glazed over kind of ballad. But you know, at least I guess the track is fine while it's on, you know, and whenever his record drops, I'm going to give it a listen, and maybe these somewhat low-key songs will hit me a little bit harder once I'm kind of listening to an entire record that might maintain that mood. Now, finally, let's get into the best tracks of the week. A lot of tracks here. Like I said, a lot of tracks that I wanted to mention. The new Harry Styles track, Sign of the Times. I'm not going to get too deeply into that track here. I thought it was really good, surprisingly good. Not a perfect song, but surprisingly good. I talked about it in a track review that is linked down there in the description. Please check that out. Moving on from there, Willie Nelson has a new track out titled He Won't Ever Be Gone, which is a lovely and amazing, a touching tribute to the late and great Merle Haggard. A really good ballad from Willie, and you know, probably one of his most heartfelt songs in a long time. And you know, he goes into I would say somewhat intimate detail about his musical relationship with Merle. And for any hardcore or any fan of country who sort of knows, you know, at least a little bit of the history of the genre, you know, you'll certainly be able to appreciate what Willie's trying to get across here. Frank Ocean, Biking, featuring Jay-Z and Tyler, the Creator. I will say this track is a little messy. The track does not work by traditional structure by any means. Sort of the very watery and dreamy acoustic intro, Frank singing, Jay-Z kind of pops in for a very unorthodox verse. Frank comes back, and then it's Tyler, and Tyler's verse is also like really low-key and odd. It's an interesting way to sort of mix pop and acoustic balladry and hip hop and a lot of other things. Frank Ocean is really kind of becoming this cross section of so many modern, interesting ideas in popular music, and he just melds them in, really passionate, very beautiful ways. And, I don't think this song like really kind of had the full impact that it could have. I think the song is bigger in name than it is in execution, because, the Jay-Z feature tag, the Tyler, the Creator feature tag, excuse me. But I do think the track for the most part worked and, came across as a successful effort. Certainly, the fact that it doesn't, hit really hard isn't necessarily the worst thing, because I do think kind of the sadness, the moodiness of the track is very potent, and the length of it as well, I do think makes it very satisfying. Moving on from there, the new Feist track, Century. I'm just going to say, because this album's, I'm really anticipating reviewing this album. This track is kind of just as raw and as wild as the previous track that Feist had dropped in promotion of her forthcoming record. But this one, it doesn't really take a long time to get going or anything like that. This one's kind of like, it hits you somewhat hard pretty soon, but it does kind of have that rough, wild, very dirty edges and corners sort of quality to it. So it's not like, it doesn't have a clean or punchy sound or anything like that to it. But I will say it is quite feisty. That's a good one. It's feisty. I'll leave it at that. Popcan track Stray Dog over here. This is some low down and dirty dance hall, man. This is some low down and dirty dance hall. I will just leave it at that. Give this thing a listen. It does have a griminess to it. I'm not talking about the genre grime. I'm talking about the textural quality of the track. Leave me alone. We're moving on from there. This new Actress track, Dancing in the Smoke. God damn. This new Actress song. It is so textured. God, man. I love the sound of this track. The sound play in this track is excellent. It's excellent. It is a cut above what you usually fucking hear in electronic music right now. It is a cut above. I tell you it is a cut above. I'm telling you that. I promise you it's a cut above. I promise that to you. Oh my God. The textures on this song, they're gorgeous. They are gorgeous. No, really, I just love how he produced this track. Like, the sounds on this track are amazing. They're so vivid. Like, I can feel my eardrums touching them and rubbing up against them. The sounds that he crafted on this song. And of course, the groove and the progression of the track is very good too. It's not just this kind of weird alternative noise piece or anything like that. Actress does a really great job of sort of taking some very alternative sounds and, sort of putting them into a, somewhat experimental but digestible sort of quality. And I like that. I love an artist who can kind of find that balance between, okay, this is experimental, this is wild, this is out there, but here's something, I'm making it a little accessible. I'm kind of organizing it a little bit. I'm making it sort of make sense. And I love that, he finds a way to orchestrate these sounds in an intriguing way, but sort of, I want to say, an intuitive way, a logical way. Moving on from there, I want to give a shout out to the new Gorillaz track, Let Me Out, featuring Pusha T and Mavis Staples. Yes! This is the first Gorillaz track from this forthcoming record that, like, legit, front to back, excited about. And I think it's one of the best compartmentalized tracks they've dropped so far. Like, the way the Pusha T feature plays off against the Mavis hook, and then Damon Albarn's vocals on the track. I mean, it's all organized and it all plays out really well. The beat is great. Everybody brings a great energy. Damon's, kind of dreary, attitude is a good cool down from Pusha T's very passionate performances on the track. I like it a lot. I think this is, again, the first track I'm hearing from this so far where they're complimenting their guests. The production is great. And I'm getting an equal balance of, okay, here's Damon's input and here's the input from the guests. And it's like, it just kind of, it just works, it just works. There's a good, like, sense of collaboration and cohesion between everybody. And I'm liking that, and I'm liking it. So I don't know, hopefully there are tracks on the record that are just as great as this one. Those other tracks that I was underwhelmed by click with me a little bit more, and just crossing my fingers that I like this Gorillaz record. Just crossing my fingers that I like humans. I want to give a shout out to Kirin, Jay Kalinin, Australian singer-songwriter. This dude has a new, amazing song out titled Bravado. This guy's last record, Embracism, I believe it's titled, was really raw, really wild, had some elements of synth pop, post-punk, art rock, like a lot of things. This thing is kind of like this very grand, like new wave inspired ballad that is just so over the top, and his vocals have so much power behind them. They did it on the last record too, but I feel like he used that power a lot of the time to express some very dark and tortured emotions on this new record over here. And while it may be slightly tongue-in-cheek, or maybe like he's kind of making a bit of an ironic statement here, I haven't read that deeply into the track yet, but this track is far more uplifting than anything I heard on his last record. Certainly lives up to that title of Bravado. It is a great ballad. It is very, I would say, great at pulling at the heartstrings. Very inspiring, if I hadn't said that already. And we're moving on. I want to give a shout out to the new Machinedrum track, Betta, which is a very glitchy, interesting piece of production. I love all of the very strange and kind of very sporadic synth sequences and pieces throughout this track. The beat is great, and just has a really great groove to it. You know, I like Machinedrum when he can pull together a somewhat aggressive track, a punchy track. It really comes through with flying colors. Literally on this song, so colorful, really comes through with flying colors. And I'm just kind of hoping to hear more of that moving forward, especially if this track is like the first taster of the upcoming record or some kind of EP or something. Or just, you know, the sign of things to come as far as like a different direction. And finally, I want to shout out the new NOX Fortune track, Help Myself. This is a very interesting song in my opinion, because it mixes so many different elements together. You know, sounds like some weird home production beat music, definitely influences this thing. Definitely sounds like some lo-fi pop influences this thing. Definitely sounds like some weird downtrodden sad singer-songwriter indie rock influences this thing. It's a lot of different weird flavors all coming together on this one track, and I actually like kind of the sad tone and the wit of the lyrics, I guess I would say, on the song too. Again, a lot of very intriguing fusions of styles and, you know, different genre ideas kind of coming together on this thing, which, you know, you're seeing more and more and more of in the internet age. And, you know, I try to take the opportunity to celebrate any artist who I think is kind of bringing those ideas, or bringing some different ideas that wouldn't normally be connected together in sort of a surprising and a creative way. And this is definitely an example of that. And that's going to be it for this episode of the best and worst tracks of the week, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hope I got you some good recommendations out of this thing. Sorry the worst tracks segment was so close, and I want to say not close, short in this one. I know some of you like that, but I was actually happier to bring you a bunch of songs that I did enjoy quite a bit this week. There were a lot of songs I enjoyed this week. But again, we're going to leave it there. You're the best. Remember that Amazon link. Remember that Turntable Lab link down there in the description. Hit those up. And I will see you guys in the next video. You're my favorite forever.